Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Muhammad Atif and this is the summary of today's lesson. Today we resumed our lesson, Unit 3, Lesson 2, our carbon footprint, page 38 and page 39. In previous lessons, we completed exercise 1, 2, 3, and 4. And today we resumed our lesson from exercise 5, which is the grammar topic, subordinate clauses. And to explain this subordinate clause, I included a short video and discussed with the class during the lesson, which I'm going to include it right now again. So kindly watch it carefully. I will explain it to you step by step during the lesson, what means by subordinate clause and how we can identify the subordinate clause and the main clause within the sentence. So please watch it carefully.
May or may not make complete sense by itself. Let's look at the following slugs. The clause. The slugs may or let's look island center for the clause has clause makes complete sense.
Okay, so please, from this point, our lesson that we are going to discuss will begin from this point of the video. So I will just include the main point, okay, the main topic, instead of discussing the whole video because it's very lengthy. So I will just try to include the short and comprehensive detail which is useful for our students to understand today's topic. So please watch it carefully from now.
The clause that makes complete sense and can stand on its own as a sentence is called the principal, independent, or main clause.
So there are two main clauses in a sentence. Usually, it's not a hard and fast rule, but usually we have two part of the sentences that we sometimes joined with subordinate conjunction to make a complete sense. Okay, the first part of the sentence is called principal clause or main clause. Okay, the clause that makes complete sense. Okay, it means that if we only read the main clause or the first part of the sentence and it gives us the complete sense, we don't need to read the second part of the sentence to understand the first part. Okay, which means that the first part of the sentence which can give us the complete sense, we call it main clause or the principal clause.
In our earlier example, the first clause is called the main clause since it can stand on its own as a sentence. Let us look at another example. I played on the beach. This sentence consists of a main clause only since it has only one subject and predicate.
So you can see in the example, the Maldives is a beautiful island. If we ignore the second part of the sentence, we can still understand what means by the first part of the sentence. The Maldives is a beautiful island. This is, it gives us complete sense. We don't need this part of the sentence. So we call it main clause. And in other example, I played on the beach. Okay, this sentence also gives us the complete meaning, so one can understand what mean by I played on the beach, and we don't need any other part of the sentence to understand this and to understand the first example. Okay, so we call them main clauses. Okay, but if we talk about just the second part of the sentence, which has many beaches, and we don't have this sentence, this part of the sentence, then we cannot understand the full meaning with the help of only this part of the sentence, which has many beaches. it's not clear which beaches we are talking about. Okay, so we need this first part of the sentence, which is, that's why we call it main clause, because without this part of the sentence we cannot understand the rest of the sentence.
A main clause can combine with one or more clauses to form a sentence. The clause that does not make complete sense by itself and depends on the main clause is called the subordinate or dependent clause. The subordinate clause tells us something more about the main clause. It can never stand on its own. A subordinate clause is usually introduced with the help of words such as that, why, when, what, how, if, who, which, where, because, since, as, etc. In our earlier example, the first clause is called the main clause and the second clause is called the subordinate clause.
So the subordinate clause, as I've mentioned earlier, the clause that does not make complete sense by itself, okay, and depends on the main clause, is called the subordinate or dependent clause. The subordinate clause tells us something more, okay, about the main clause. So we discuss about the main clause. If we want to give more details about the main clause, we usually use the subordinate clause. For example, the Maldives is a beautiful island. This is the main clause because it gives us the complete meaning without any help, without the help of any other sentence. So we call it main clause. Okay, so but we want to give more information about Maldives, so we added a subordinate clause which has many beaches. Okay, so this is called the subordinate clause because without the help of the main clause we cannot understand the meaning of the subordinate clause. So this is the explanation of subordinate clause. And the most important thing, that to join main clause with subordinate clause we use some conjunctions, what we call them conjunctions, so we or connectives, so we call them subordinate conjunctions. And these are the sum of the subordinate conjunctions that you can see on your screen right now: that, why, when, what, how, if, who, which, where, because, since, and etc. So these, we how we can choose these conjunctions, we choose these conjunctions according to the main clause. If in main clause we are talking about a place, we use the conjunction which. Or if we are talking about a person, we will use the conjunction who. If we are talking about, you can say, if we are talking about the reason, okay, that we discussed in the first or the main clause, we will use the conjunction why and because. So this is how we can join sub main clause and subordinate clause. So this just a quick overview for the students. Like, the main clause is independent clause. Clause is a part of a sentence, okay. So the main clause is independent clause, and it do not need any other part of the sentence to complete it. Okay, for example, the Maldives is a beautiful city. This is a complete sentence. If we just write a sentence like this, we don't need to write another sentence to gives it a complete meaning. But if we want to give more information, we will add a subordinate clause, okay, and we will use the subordinate conjunction according to the main clause. And subordinate clause cannot give the meaning on its own by itself, okay. It always needs the main clause to complete its meaning. So this is the explanation of a main clause and subordinate clause. To explain subordinate clause, it was compulsory or mandatory to understand the main clause. So that's why we discussed both. And after the discussion on the main clause and subordinate clause, we discussed the exercise 5, in which we have to match two halves like 1, 2, 3, 4. We have need to match these four halves with these four halves. Okay, so we match them according to the uh, requirement, and then I've displayed the answers to the class, which I'm going to include right now again. So these are the answers of exercise 5 on your screen right now. Sentence 1 goes with sentence B, sentence 2 goes with sentence A, sentence 3 goes with sentence D, and 4 goes with sentence C. So after that, we discuss the last activity, which is the discussion. Okay, and we discuss different sources of energy that we used at our school. Okay, discuss how energy is used at our school, and we make a list. We made a list during the lesson, like air conditions, tube lights, fan, photocopier, air conditions, multimedia projectors. Okay, so we need these things to uh, we use these things to teach and to study at our school, and all of these things use uh, electricity, which causes the production of energy. And as you know that we learned that everything that we use with electricity or gas, okay, it produces energy and also carbon dioxide gas. And then we discussed how we can reduce the footprint, and the students discussed some of their ideas, okay, like we discussed in previous lesson. So that was the today's lesson. Hope you understand the subordinate clause, and also the use of energy at our place. So thank you so much for your time. Take care, and Allah Hafiz.